President Biden is in Europe this week for a NATO meeting, but he made a stopover in London today to meet with the prime minister and the king. Now, royal protocol is not the most important thing in the world, but I think media narratives are important. So I just want to sort of kick this one off with a sort of lighter topic. Do you remember this headline about President Trump walking with the Queen in 2018, saying that he caused social media flurry because he walked in front of the Queen? At the time, the headlines were fast and furious about how he didn't know what he was doing. He broke social etiquette. He embarrassed United States of America, all of that stuff. Well, here is a video of when President Trump walked with Queen Elizabeth and for a moment, again, walked in front of her. All right. So that was the social faux pas that the media freaked out about in 2018. Well, here is today President Biden walking with the king. All right. So obviously, in terms of protocol, President Biden's behavior is a bigger faux pas, wouldn't you say? If you care about this sort of thing, Philip, put them side by side so we can see the two men. Now, again, I'm not telling you one is worse than the other, but the media freaked out about Trump, who was in front of the Queen for about 3 seconds before he let her come around the side. President Biden seems to not even know where he is in life. So will the media and the internet point out now how Biden is not with it the way that they did with Trump? Probably not, because they like to pretend he's totally fine and with it. He is not. Here's a video that surfaced this weekend of him from a tribute to Vera Wang, which happened in March of this year.
Included groundbreaking Asian Americans like Vera Wang and Joan Shingang, I'm going to pronounce it, Shanga Kawawa.
That was hard to watch. Okay, so now that we've established who we're dealing with here, now we're talking about that person making decisions about global warfare. Okay, everyone feel better? He is deciding the future of the war in Ukraine at the NATO summit in Lithuania, which starts tomorrow. We're going to get to that summit in a minute. But one of the main issues that matters to the world is Ukraine and whether or not they will be allowed into NATO. It's my opinion they should not, because NATO is a creator of war, but we'll talk more about that later. What Western leaders have warned is that they don't want Ukraine in this bloc or in the European Union for years, because they know that Ukraine is, one, deeply in debt. In 2014, recall that the IMF did not want to loan any more money to Ukraine while they were raging an $8 million a day war on the Donbass, which now they no longer control, but they want back to continue that $8 million a day war. Is that a good investment, do you think? Western leaders also knew and know that Ukraine is deeply corrupt and will never stop raging this war on the Donbass, whether Russia is there or not. And the Western press knew this until they decided to pretend that they don't. Now, Zelensky's threatened to not show up for the cameras if Ukraine is not allowed a full membership in NATO. I don't think he really means it. There's no way that guy is going to step away from the cameras. But President Biden spoke about Ukraine's NATO membership on CNN this weekend, and he said, basically, not now. Listen.
I don't think there is unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family now, at this moment, in the middle of a war. For example, if you did that, then, I mean what I say, we're determined to commit every inch of territory that is NATO territory. It's a commitment that we've all made, no matter what. If the war is going on, then we're all in the war.
This is actually the most logical thing he said about Ukraine in a very long time. If you admit a country into NATO that's at war, then every other country is at war. And I was even shocked that CNN bothered to show that map of the NATO countries that would be dragged into a war. They usually don't do this. He said that Putin had been hoping he could break NATO. Never mind that Russia actually applied to become a member of NATO in the 90s and was blackballed by the Bush administration. Also that Russia was the first to offer the U.S. the use of military bases after 9/11. But okay. But this means that we don't want to be dragged into a war. But this argument is kind of bad faith, given the fact that Biden is leading this war and the United States forces behind whoever's really making the decisions, because it doesn't seem like it's President Biden, although he did seem coherent-ish in that CNN interview. I was like, is that the same guy who then, is this perpetual, I don't know where I am squint? Seems to be. But the U.S. is pressuring Europe to support Ukraine. The U.S. is dragging the war on and is sabotaging peace talks. This was just last month. Remember, Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned against peace. So NATO doesn't want peace. The United States is going there to make sure other allied NATO members also don't want peace. We're going to take a look this week at the agenda of what they're going to be talking about. But NATO members are said to be working on some sort of junior varsity agreement with Ukraine. So it's not really an assurance that they'll be members, but just that they're going to have their back.
Like a mascot. There's like NATO's mascot. You can be our mascot. You're not official. Yes. You're not an official member, but we'll put you out in front of the cameras and you can smile and wave. Ukraine is NATO's mascot, I guess.
That's a good one. Yeah. I like that. Not necessarily JV, but it's like you wear the suit, right? Dance in front of the cameras, which, again, we know that Ukraine is going to continue to do. According to Politico, it says world leaders in NATO are trying to create an umbrella for all countries willing to provide Ukraine with ongoing military aid, even if the details vary from country to country. I don't know what that means. An umbrella, I guess. The only thing I could do with that imagery is kind of flip it upside down. And then you can think maybe a funnel where like everyone puts in a little bit and it funnels. I don't understand at all this idea of an umbrella. And Politico did no favors in trying to explain it. Meanwhile, the U.S. has said that it is willing to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. These are small bombs that kill indiscriminately. According to the BBC, even U.S. allies have expressed unease about this. Let's watch this piece from Al Jazeera to remind ourselves what it is we're dealing with if we up the ante to cluster bombs.
These cluster bombs are considered so dangerous, they've been banned by more than 120 countries. But the US says they'll be included in a new military aid package to Ukraine. Neither have joined the convention banning their use, nor has Russia.
Mr. President, cluster munitions, why now?
We've run out of ammunition.
So just how dangerous are they? The missile canisters contain hundreds of smaller bombs that spread out in the air. This means they are indiscriminate and can have a widespread and devastating impact. The International Committee of the Red Cross says as many as 40% of the bomblets fail to detonate and can pose a threat to civilians decades later. Human Rights Watch accuses Ukraine and Russia of killing civilians with cluster weapons.
All right. So in that piece, when the president is walking out of a room that's like playing band music, they say, why are you doing this now? And he says, we've run out of ammunition. Well, OK. Is that true? Because we've seen them continuously ordered more from weapons makers. Is this really like we're cleaning out the closet? We just don't have anything else. So then you would think maybe then we stop, or maybe this is a time to it doesn't. Does that explanation hold any water to the rest of us? And like, why would you, if it's true, why would you say it in public? Because the enemy could hear you and they think, oh, well, this is all you've got left. Like, I can't buy that. I absolutely can't buy that. Now, remember, we started reporting about cluster bombs back in December. Do you remember this? This was in Dave DeCamp says, really, like all cluster bombs do is make sure more civilians are killed because cluster bombs are indiscriminate. And in March, Republican lawmakers said, oh, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. Look at this. Republican lawmakers pressed Biden to send cluster bombs. Why do they want this so badly? Why would they think that this is an awesome idea? given that the counteroffensive is all but dead and stalled, given that maybe we really don't have anything else, do we really want to clean out the closet and send these, which have a 40% fail rate and then can linger around and kill people later? Who there is thinking, this is going to win? This is the ticket we haven't tried. This is the winning tactic, these cluster bombs. And now that the U.S. seems to have acquiesced to this idea, cluster bombs, again, are banned by many countries and are against humanitarian laws, according to the United Nations. The one thing I can think about, though, about this is at the very least, it helps to sort of get rid of this idea of precision strike. This is a propaganda term that was used a lot by the Obama administration, and I think even conceived of during the Obama administration. This idea that you can target exactly who you want and have no collateral damage is a lie. It's something that, spokespeople for the government will say, oh, yes, we took out just that target, and everyone else around them was totally fine. We know that's not true from the first WikiLeaks in 2010 from Julian Assange. This is what U.S. Army Colonel Amos Fox coined the term precision paradox. This is about the U.S. war on ISIS, but it continues to be something that we as media consumers have to fight against. It's like this idea that there's a situation in which the failed promise of precision strikes, that is one strike, one kill, generates a creeping wave of destruction. So if you can buy into precision strikes as a thing, you sort of let it go by you. Like, that's fine. That's fine too. Take out that terrorist, don't hurt that village. Take out that terrorist, no civilians killed. Like it. Moving on. Next click, right? And it's not true. It's just how we swallow terrible things and how the truth is kept from us that civilians are harmed and communities destroyed by warfare. So at least, is this a silver lining? I don't know. I mean, I hate to even present it at this. At the very least, if the West is talking about cluster bombs, you know that the destruction is going to be widespread. And this sort of bull crap about precision strike is gone, right? We don't have to pretend.
Well, if we end up in this like perpetual war and now we're sending cluster bombs because we're out of ammunition, what do we send when we run out of cluster bombs? I mean, are we just going to have to be like, well, I know we've got all of these like chemical weapons around that we're not supposed to use, but we're out of cluster bombs.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
that's like the, I don't know, the last thing left in your pantry. What's the last thing left in your pantry, you guys, if you weren't going to eat anything else? Like canned salmon.
I imagine the last thing the thing we'd end up with is like what, mustard gas, end up just with, throwing cyanide gas out there and be like, yeah, but we're out of everything else. Yeah. And it's still not over. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
So, I mean, peace is never an option here. We don't have it. We know civilians will be killed, but like we're to the back of the cupboard. So the cupboards are bare now. We have to then eat what's left there. Yeah. Biological weapons, right? We already have infodemics, informational weaponry. So then what's next? I mean, is it a silver lining now that they're not insulting our intelligence with this lie about precision strikes? Or is it just like, oh, well, more groups of people will be killed and that will help us because is it like a widening of the scope of acceptability, right? We accepted precision strikes. Now we're accepting small groups of kills. Will that just be widening until we're just like entire generations, right? Is it that we're accepting? I don't know. Let me know what you think of this in the chat and whether or not the United States is, I mean, if you're a U.S. taxpayer like me, passport holder, you're paying for this. This is on your dime. But you have paid for it already. They exist. If that's what they, if this is what's left, this is what we got, right? We paid for it. It's a sunk cost. So I guess the government has decided they might as well use it since it's there, since they bought it. Again, like eating out of the back of the pantry. So let us know what you think of that in the chat, whether or not you think that this is something the United States is actually going to do, whether they should do it, whether or not this rhetoric around NATO will continue to sort of, let Ukraine be the mascot, but not really allow them in. Whether any of this is heading towards peace. Nothing I've said today gives me any kind of encouragement about peace that is forthcoming, but if you can see any there, let me know.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.